This review was made possible by the Yojo Outlet Center, specializing in vintage G.I. Joe toys and parts.
Hello everyone, I'm Kevin, otherwise known as Form BX257, here to bring you another 1980s G.I. Joe toy review, and today I'll be taking a look at the 1987 Cobra Sea Ray and its pilot navigator, a Cobra Sea Slug. Now unfortunately, this Cobra attack submarine doesn't make any cartoon or comic book appearances. As a matter of fact, it's actually rather strange that this didn't make any comic book appearances, because in 1987 and 1988 there were a lot of storylines concerning Cobra Island, and you would think that this would have been included in order to bulk up the Cobra Navy power.
The Sea Ray has a very swoopy, almost organic looking hull. It has these manta ray motifs, as well as this whale tail looking rudder. So most collectors tend to think of this as a sea vehicle with air capabilities. But strangely enough, the box as well as the instructions actually refer to this as an aircraft, meaning that this thing was supposed to be capable of flight just as it is. The Sea Ray has two modes, but I'll get into that a bit later. The Sea Ray has an opening canopy, which fits one figure, the included driver, which I'll get to a bit later. It also has these two front guns. They just swivel up and down. I'll be honest, I don't really like these sort of mushroom peg things that come right through the gun here. Around 1987 and onwards, I feel that Hasbro kind of cheaped out on the design by making those pegs sort of visible. I mean, I think it's okay on wheels where this would act as a hub, but on anything else like guns, it just sort of ruins the effect in my opinion. The manta ray also comes with 8 of these missiles. They're all the same. 4 on each side, of course. They just peg in with these universal dumbbell pegs. And on the top, we have a removable engine cover. To show off the engine detail on the inside. Underneath the nose of the Sea Ray is actually this recessed cavity here with a back peg, which are meant to put an extra figure here, usually a diver. He fits in rather well. It's so recessed, in fact, that it can just go straight down like that, and the figure is still relatively protected. Now, this thing has 2 modes, and what you're supposed to do is disconnect the entire back end. And this part becomes a glider. Despite being just a chunk off the back end of the vessel, I do get the impression that this is really supposed to be a glider and not just some hastily thought up gimmick just to add value to the Sea Ray. It has mainly the wings here and the rudder, as well as the bell thrusters attached to the framework. On the other hand, I really don't like how they've attached the figure controls here. This is the back peg, and you just attach a figure like so. And of course there are handles, which is nice and handy, and of course controls here. The problem is that the head kind of sticks out through this hole. So shouldn't the controls have been on this side and not on the bottom? Still, it does kind of look like a nice little glider though. part reminds me of something. What does it remind me of?
A super dimensional Fortress Macross Valkyrie Batroid chest piece? How random is that?
And this is just the remaining part of the vessel, the submarine pod, if you will. And again, I would have to say that this is very well engineered, such that you wouldn't even notice that this is missing a huge part off the back end. This really does just look like its own standalone little mini vehicle. Personally, one of the biggest downfalls of this vehicle is how the two parts attach to one another. You're supposed to take these little nubs here, angle them downwards into the back end of what is basically a hole in the engine cover, and then sort of swing the whole thing down, which, as you can see, I'm having a bit of trouble with that because it doesn't seem to want to line up ever. And when it does, sometimes it's not quite lined up here, and as such it sort of leans backwards when it's not proper. My only word of advice is to take the engine cover completely off so you can actually see how these clips are connecting onto the back of the I guess the back engine wall here. Even then, it's still difficult to put this thing back together. The Sea Ray Navigator Troopers, codenamed the Sea Slugs, come with only one accessory, and that's this small silver pistol. You'll notice it has these shark-like fins on the design, and giving it more of a techno-organic look. Rather different from any of the other Cobra designs. You'll also notice that he also has a very organic look with these bladder-like bulbs on his boots and hill holster, as well as these fin-like things on his shoulders and this thick brow on his helmet. Speaking of techno-organic, in the same year that he was released, the Cobra Law figures were also released. Now, even though there is a similarity in the colors, I'm not sure if this was a lost Cobra Law design or not. He definitely doesn't have anything like that in his file card. One interesting thing about the figure is that he does have a unit emblem on his chest instead of the Cobra logo. So this is the same emblem which you can find on the Sea Ray vehicle itself. But because it's so fine and made of a silver paint, it's very easy to find this thing sort of rubbed off. It's right on the tip of his chest, which is a point which gets rubbed and touched very often, unfortunately. Oh, excuse me just one moment. Yoink.
Let's see if the sub-pod floats. Not really well. It's floating, but listing to one side or the other. Let's try with the glider part attached. It's really weighed down at the back now. The extra weight evens it out somewhat, but it's barely floating. With the Cobra Sea Ray's ability to be a submarine as well as an aircraft with space underneath to carry a diver, it's obvious that the 1984 G.I. Joe Shark was meant to be its rival. The Shark is advertised as a flying submarine and can carry 2 extra divers on its hull in place of 2 torpedoes. While the Shark loses some points for its angular, non-flow tunnel design, it is a solid one-piece design. However practical the splitting into 2 separate crafts is, the Sea Ray's major weakness is the connection point. It makes it feel fragile, and I always catch myself when picking it up to make sure I'm holding a part that won't stress the unreliable connector.
Side by side, the Cobra Sea Ray looks larger and more aggressive than the GI Joe Shark, despite being the same class and price range, although separated by 3 retail years. The Cobra Sea Ray's bulk comes from the hollowed out parts to allow for the figures on the hull, and the extended whale tail. The GI Joe Shark is compact to the point where its cannons are hidden and have to pop out of the engines, but I'm sure some of the budget for the Shark went to the figure, Deep 6, who has a unique sculpt and real diving and surfacing air pump action. To be honest, I was a bit indecisive as to which extra figure I was going to display with the Sea Ray. The 1985 Cobra Eel with its matching gray, red, black color scheme, or the 1988 Hydro Viper with the purple, red organic look that matches the Sea Slug driver. Fortunately, I don't have to choose. The bottom can carry both figures nicely. I was worried that the connection overlap from the glider portion would render the glider back peg or figure space back there useless, but it remains open. Well, that's all the time I have right now. Please check out my Facebook page for more information and behind-the-scenes photos for these reviews. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for next time to see another 1980s G.I. Joe toy review. See you then!